Boy, I love Fridays, sitting down in the green chair, giving some answers raw and unedited. Thank you guys so much for joining my live stream last night. A lot of good questions that were answered, and today going to answer a lot of questions, both from my YouTube channel and some of the questions that were asked last night. I can't always get to all of your questions. I'm just one man, but I try to do the best I can. So don't hate me if I don't get to your question. I'll try to get to it somewhere in the future, and if I don't, you might just have to try to ask it again, but I'll do the best I can. Let's get right into it today. I'm sitting on my front porch of my studio. Got some firewood yesterday, and it's what's behind me here. I'm sitting here because the winds are out of the north, and north is that way. So I have the kind of a wind block if I tried. Sometimes the wind's out of the south, and there's no good place to film. And got a little shade here to get into here and answer some questions. So good to see you guys. Let's jump right into it. Don says, I'm in North Carolina and my drones are still flying November the 7th between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. When did the drones stop flying? Well, in North Carolina, I'm not sure what drones do over there, but here in Illinois, my drones, they're pretty much gone now. They're pretty much kicked out of the hive. Now the drones, if they were still in your hive and they were still trying to go to drone congregation areas, they're usually back into the hive late afternoon. You'll see drones start coming in about 3 and 4. So maybe you're seeing them returning home. But yeah, drones usually start flying by midday to drone congregation areas. And for those of you that aren't into beekeeping, but you're watching my channel anyway and you don't know how this works, drones are the male honeybees, and they go out to a big, what we call a DC, a drone congregation area, some amount of feet off the ground, and they hang out there in a large group as males waiting for a virgin queen to fly in, and 20 plus drones will mate with one virgin queen. The virgin queen flies back as a mated queen. So that's interesting. That's what drones do for a living. Well, bad news is they die after they mate pretty instantly. All right, Johnny, hey, can candy boards that have been installed on the top of the hive become moldy in the winter months if it is not consumed fast? Recommended time frame to keep one on before switching to a fresh candy board. I check my candy boards regularly, like every probably 10 days, and I'll just go in there, pop it up, look, see how much of the candy is eaten by the bees. But I've never had it become moldy before. I've not seen that. One thing we don't embrace in beekeeping is a certain amount of moisture in the hive in the wintertime is not a bad thing. You don't want excess moisture that drips down on the bees and makes them cold. But bees do need moisture in the wintertime, believe it or not. And so sometimes that moisture collects on the side of the hives, and that can make your wood look a little stained by the mildew, and so it's not uncommon. But a time frame on switching the candy boards is just looking at them, see how much they've consumed. I've had them consume 4 or 5 pounds of candy in a week. Sometimes it takes a month. Depends on a lot of things, how big they are as a colony, and it depends on how much other resources they might have. Hi, David. How do the bees metabolize the pollen and sugar water that are mixed together? It separates in different cells in the comb. How do they separate it? That's a good question. It's a legitimate question. I see what you're saying. Like, they really don't mix it. And when they do mix it, we call that bee bread. But yeah, for the most part, they kind of keep it separated for easier storage. But on the one hand, I want to say this, that honey in the hive does have pollen in it. When bees bring back honey, nectar from flowers, and they dry it down and store it as honey, there are pollen grains in the honey. That's why, and technically and legally, honey is not honey unless it has both the nectar from flowers and the pollen grains from flowers actually in your honey. So they do separate it in different places for, if they need a whole bunch of protein, they can go to the stored pollen frame. But honey does have pollen in it. And so if you mix it up in your sugar water, it is supposed to kind of be just like that of honey. It has a little bit of protein in it. Yeah, good question. Does the cluster move left and right or only up for food during the winter? Left and right. Up and down, left and right, they'll move anywhere they want to. But as I've said before, if you're running Langstroth, like horizontal Langstroth hives, or you're running Layens hive or top bar hives, that horizontal left to right movement is harder on bees to accomplish, because when you move up and down, the frames are lined up in a vertical Langstroth, and so the cluster can actually move, and they can move between the combs, you know, that way. But when they're all stacked up like this, they have to come down here or up here and move, actually get away from the comb to move and get back up into the comb. So a little tougher, and especially in the north where I live, for the cluster to move in a horizontal hive. I found that to be true. Yeah, they do move left and right. David, I have one hive with 2 deeps and one with 1 deep and 2 supers in North Nevada. They seem okay, but is that too much? Oh, too many boxes, you mean? It all depends on how many bees are in there. It depends on the population. If they're a gigantic colony, they need all that space. It's probably worthwhile to have that much space. But if they're a smaller colony, they're struggling, it might be better to trim it down a little bit. Bees don't need a whole bunch of room if they're not, you know, you wouldn't want to put 15 deeps, for example, if I exaggerate it to just show an example. 15 deep boxes for an average size colony is way too much space. And so what that magic number is nobody knows it based on how many bees you have, which I don't know. And so, but I'd say an average hive for me is around 40,000 to 60,000 in the wintertime. And that works out well for me to have 2 deeps and a medium super. Yeah. Hey, Gary, what temperature is too cold to change out the winter sugar boards? Good question. Boy, this, look, here's this is raw and unedited, by the way. My take on this, over my years of experience and the literature that I've studied on, you know, people that have done scientific work on this, is that bees do not really heat the inside of their hive. I know we think they do. We want to think bees, like, there's a misconception about honeybees, right? Honeybees heat each other. That's what a cluster does. They heat one another, and they just get real close to each other. And I know a lot of times we feel like we have to build a hive like our house, because we think bees are like humans. Humans need a well-insulated house because we don't want to pay a high electric bill. So we insulate our homes, both our walls and our ceiling, and we feel like our bees will do better if they're in a heavily insulated hive. Now, you know, I don't want to poo-poo that idea, because obviously some people think that if bees are heavily insulated, they won't have to use as much energy to stay warm, and I think there's some truth to that. But at the same time, we sometimes don't realize that in a tree, that's often referred to as the natural habitat of honeybees. And we think the tree is 6 inches wide. They have all that big insulation. And there's no upper ventilation in a tree. But get this, a lot of the hives that I've taken out of trees, some of them do have upper insulation or upper ventilation because there's a broken branch or something. But most, if not all, the bees that I've taken out of homes and out of trees and buildings and all, there's a lot of upper space. There's not a dead end space like there is in a hive. Like, what I mean is, what I've observed is that the comb may be in a cavity of a tree, but the cavity narrowly goes up maybe a foot or two, where the opening is kind of not as big of an opening. And the comb may start down here, but there's a lot of space up here that some of this air can rise up into. But yeah, so the other thing is, a lot of times we think, like in my home, I like to be 70 degrees, 68 degrees, you know, in the wintertime. I like to be warmer, but it costs more. But we don't realize that I don't have 40 other thousand people right next to me making heat. Bees operate that way. Bees are fine producing their own heat. And I don't know why we don't think that's okay. We think that, oh my gosh, if they make heat, they're going to use up all their energy. But that's what they do, right? That's how they do it. So I take the philosophy, and I could be wrong. What do I know? But my philosophy and my experimenting with bees and succeeding in getting bees through the winter is that bees don't mind a cluster. They will cluster at temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and the colder it is, the tighter they cluster. They seem to do that. And we know that they don't eat as much food when it's like 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why a lot of indoor storage facilities that store bees in the winter, like that, big commercial beekeepers, they try to keep it at that magic temperature where bees don't consume as much food, because the temperature around 30 to 40 degrees. I don't know. So, you know, when is it too cold to change out the winter sugar boards? Well, you open the top up. A lot of us feel like that's like taking the roof off of your house. You're going to kill your bees. No, it's not going to hurt your bees if you do it quick. They're not heating the inside, they're heating each other, and they can quickly heat each other. Somebody made a reference, and I thought it was a good reference. They said, you know, I have a horse, and my horse out in the field, sure, could survive winter out there in the field, in the pasture, but the horse would a lot rather be probably in an insulated barn. The difference there is, it's not one horse. When you're comparing it to bees, you had to put 40,000 horses out there really close together. And horses make a lot of heat. And so 40,000 horses all smashed together. I mean, you know, that's different. It's hard to do this apples to oranges comparison with bees and horses and humans and houses and hives. But we think we've got it figured out, but it's going to be different based on region. It's going to be different based on how many bees are in there. But you can always take that candy board off in about any temperature you want to. Now, I recommend doing it at a decent day, like if it's above freezing, not very windy, not rainy, not snowy. That's the time to change out your candy boards. But bees are going to be fine. They're clustered together. They should be clustered in the winter, and you can swap that out, no problem. That was a long way around the barn to answer that question. I'll try to do better and answer the rest of them faster. I have 2 deeps. Oh, I have 2 deeps. Top is 3 frame of brood and 7 honey. The bottom has empty comb. Do I remove it? Okay, so you got 2 deeps, 3 frames of brood, and 7 honey. The bottom is empty. Do I remove it? Oh, I think I am really perplexed, and the best way that I can say is that I would have to almost see your configuration. I need to inspect your hive with you. I need to say, okay, let's see how many bees you have. Let's look at your brood pattern. Tell me what your mite loads were. Tell me where you live. Are you in Canada? Are you in the southern part of Louisiana where it's really warm? You know, I need to know all that information. So I can't really tell you without knowing, Joe, where exactly you live and what the condition of your hive is. But I would say right now you might want to just keep it the way it is. Heat rises, so it's not going to hurt that to be down there. If it was above them, I may be a little more concerned. All right, Michelle, we are in North Alabama. That helps a lot. We have a queenless hive. What do you recommend for wintering them? Thank you. What do I recommend? Getting a queen. Absolutely, get a queen. And you might think, well, David, nobody has a queen for sale. What do I do? And I would say maybe try to combine it with another hive that you have that is queen right. That would help. Not a good idea to go into winter queenless. They're not going to make it. Even if they make it, they're going to perish really quickly in the spring, late winter, spring, when there's no queen in there. They're going to go to laying workers, just going to make a bunch of drones. You need a queen. Is there any way to get a queen? Need a queen. That's what I would recommend. I have only 3 beehives. Is it okay to open feed sugar water 100 feet away? Last time I did, my bees showed up to my door, and we're trying to get through the windows. I'm not sure what that means. I guess they showed up to your house because you were feeding them 100 feet away. So maybe your feeders went empty and they were coming back to the house saying, we're out of food out here, so you need to come back and put some more sugar water for us. That's what my bees do at my window. I can't believe they know where I sit and come and tell me that their feeders are empty. They do. I'm not kidding you. I can make a video if you want me to. So maybe that's what they're doing. 100 feet away, I tell you what, anytime you open feed bees, you always run the risk of increasing robbing. So you have to be aware of that. So whether that's okay or not, in some states, they don't want you to open feed because it can spread diseases. Some people just don't like to do it. Only your strong colonies will be able to fly out and get the nectar. Your weak colonies may not have enough foragers. So it's always better to feed your bees from the top if you can do that. Hey, Mark. I have a vacuum packing device. Can I use that for storing frames long time? I've had that asked before, and I'm not crazy about it. There a lot of different creatures like, if you have like small hive beetle eggs or greater wax moth eggs in that comb, even if you kind of vacuum pack it, there's probably going to be enough air in there for things to start a little bit. It may not be as bad, but you still could have some mold spores that take off or something. But I don't know, Mark, would you please try it on a few frames over the winter and get back to me? Because I want to know. That's the only way to figure this out, right? It's not going to hurt anything. If it doesn't work out and you ruin a couple of frames, you throw them away, right? I would try it, because if it works wonderful, then you can start selling this vacuum pack for bees, right? And the way that people do that nowadays is they take a regular vacuum packing device, that the cheapest one they can find, right, that works on everything, and they label it for beekeeping. And because it's a beekeeping hobby packing device, you can charge twice as much and beekeepers will pay it. You'll be at the next big conference and you'll have a big table set up and you'll be the guy that came up with the beekeeping packing device, which is nothing more than a regular packing device with a picture of a bee on it. I know, we're so gullible. It's like, oh my gosh, did you hear about that new beekeeping packing device? Whoa, I paid $345 for it and I love it. You could have bought the thing for $15 if it didn't have a bee on it. I'm going crazy here. If I wasn't doing this raw and unedited, I'd probably edit that out. And you probably would have been glad if I did. All right. Well, you get to see a side of me that's unedited. Henry, sugar. Oh, sugar. Is there a difference for the bees between beet sugar and cane sugar? You know, there's a different makeup a little bit because it's a different sugar, slightly, I guess, but its origin. No, the bees don't care. They really don't. It's going to be the same for them. Remember, bees live a very short life. They're not like humans that live 70, 80 years. And so what we eat affects us long term. That's a loud noise. And so bees aren't going to be affected long term for what kind of sugar you give them. I've never seen a difference. I've used both. Yeah. I kind of like the idea of cane sugar personally, and I do go cane sugar when I feed my bees, but I don't think it matters. Okay, David from Gary, would you recommend using diatomaceous earth on your screen bottom boards to kill falling beetles and mites? I hear it's not harmful to bees. Yeah, diatomaceous earth. I wouldn't use it on my bottom board. I would use it under my bottom board, but I'm not sure if I like the idea of having it in my hive. Yeah. I'm not comfortable with diatomaceous earth where bees can get into it. I understand it's for smaller, things, but I just want to be a little more cautious about it. All right, Robert, what other type of amino additive can be used when I can't get amino B booster? You said healthy. What other type of? There is some other types made by some other companies. I think Man Lake offers a type of amino B protein liquid, but you'll have to do your own research on that. I found one that I like, amino B booster, and I just haven't ever had to search out other alternatives. I have 2 weak hives and I need to combine it. Can I bank the extra queen? I live in South Mississippi. South Mississippi going to give you a lot better chance to bank that queen. There's a fly. Oh boy, okay. A fly on my camera. So can you bank a queen? You can bank. I'm trying to figure out how to bank mated queens through the winter. I'm not doing very good with it. I barely make it through the winter. I can't even bank myself through the winter, people. Yeah, I break my bank trying to get myself through the winter with propane costs, electric bills of trying to heat my old farmhouse here. I should have insulated some non-insulated wall. I mean, I got some parts of my house that aren't insulated, and I should have insulated. My house was built in 1876, and of course that insulation wasn't a thought of back then. Some of the add-ons to it have insulation, and some of the places I've worked on it, I've added insulation. I put insulation in the attic, and that's how. But my gosh, some of the walls in some of the upstairs bedrooms, it's just like you touch them and you stick to them. Like that little boy in the Christmas story movie, he put his tongue on that flagpole and it stuck. My upstairs rooms are like that. They're so cold. Oh my gosh, and it just takes so much heat to heat my house. But you live in the South, and you could probably bank queens. I don't really know how long. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And there's been people that have experimented with it and have results. But it's always different by climate and how you treat bees. So I'm trying to figure it out. If you want to try it, I would say you know, it's like making an investment in a risky stock. Don't invest money that you're not willing to depart with. So in this case, don't risk experimenting with this queen unless you're ready to depart with her. But I would experiment and see, you might come up with something. Hey, Victor, had 2 cutouts in mid-October in Maryland. Both queens did not survive the BVAC. Nah, I love a BVAC. We made our own BVACs, and we worked tirelessly to make it where when a bee went through all the stuff and they got sucked into the box, they didn't die. We even had little egg crate cushioning to slow down the bees landing in the box and all. But I do get what you're saying. What do you do with colonies? What to do with colonies put on weak hives or shake out in the bee yard or just let die off? Both had brood prior to the cutout, no mite checks. Yeah, here's the deal with that. A lot of times when we veer off what we know we can get away with keeping bees healthy, and we start doing things where, we're not doing the common things that we need to be doing to keep bees healthy, and our bees become unhealthy, queenless, not checking for mites and all, and now we want to make everything work right. I get it. I know you want to do it, but this makes it real difficult. So there's no magic answer. The answer to the question is make sure they have a good queen early on, make sure the mite levels are low. But since you didn't do that, what are you going to do now? Good question. You could do any of these things. You could shake them out in the bee yard, let the bees find a new home. You could let them die off if you wanted to, or you can combine them with other hives. Not testing for mites though, and combining them might bring a lot of mites into those other hives. So you're kind of up against, you're trying to make a bad situation better, but it's going to be tough. Yeah. South Carolina, new beak here. Very mild weather. Yeah, it's mild here today. Right now it's 60 degrees and bees are starting to fly a little bit. A lot, actually. It's not any wind, so it's nice. So you've had mild weather there. Very full frames of honey and super. Brood frames have that rainbow honey arch above it, above the brood. Do I still need to feed? It sounds like you're doing pretty good. Judging how much brood you have is an art, really. It depends on how long your winter is in South Carolina. I'm speaking in South Carolina and North Carolina in March. I look forward to, maybe we'll see each other there. But you need some brood to get you through winter. Bees are winter physiology, so I really don't know how much brood you're talking about. But it doesn't sound like you're bad off. You got honey above them. And I think in South Carolina, you don't need as much honey as I do. Do you still need to feed? It's not a bad thing to do because I always say my winter bee kinds are insurance. They're just, all bees should have enough food to get through a winter. So I put winter bee kind boards on there for insurance. And then my bees eat it and they raise brood. And so I give them more food because I like a lot of brood in the wintertime. Yeah, so it's your call. But feeding probably would be a safe way to go about it. Hi, David. I haven't had any eggs in my hive for at least a few weeks. I think I have carnies. That means a carniolan type of queen. Should I still have eggs? Carniolans do slow down if there's not a big nectar flow. Whether or not you can have a really, purebred or really strong carniolan trait is questionable in my mind, but it sounds like you think you do. And so should you still have eggs? Yeah, you should always have some eggs, but it is reduced by low incoming nectar, and winter weather is going to reduce the amount of eggs any queen's going to lay. Unless you feed them like I do in the wintertime, then they're going to lay like crazy. Sometimes I notice when I'm talking to you guys and I look out there, you can't help it. Where I live, it's just so pretty and gorgeous. I'm going to swing the camera around. So let's see if I can do this without destroying everything. Oh no, it's changing. And yeah, it's not going to work. But anyway, I'm sorry. I thought I'd show you what I look at, but it's just fun to look out there. I can see for miles, so it's entertaining for me. I'll try not to look away. Oh, okay. Elizabeth, hi David. Oh no, I already answered that one. Emmy's World. I've noticed you use a plastic looking top cover on your hives. Are there any advantages to those, and what was it? It is a plastic top cover. We sell them or have sold them. They're called Bee Smart. They're from Bee Smart, and I do like them. They are nice. Oh my gosh. I have the worst problem with top covers just because I abuse them and they're hard to get off. I do like these plastic top covers. I don't have them on all my hives, not those, well, one back there has it, but I'd say I probably have 50% of the ones that are plastic. And I think they're good. Yeah, they don't provide as much, I don't think as much insulation like a wood top cover would, I don't think. They don't seem like they would to me. All right, next question, Mike. Telescoping top cover or migratory top cover, which is better? Another top cover question. I think I've answered this before. Migratory top covers are just basically a piece of wood with a hole in the middle for feeding. Commercial style tops is what they are. I like them, but sometimes our Illinois weather, we have a lot of brutal rains and cold, windy rains, and I like a telescoping, which means it hangs over the top or over the box a little bit to keep the weather out. So for me, I just saw too much stuff getting into my migratory lids. If I was in the South, I wouldn't mind migratory lids. If I was in Florida where it dries off fast, you know, after a rain, it doesn't get horribly winter down there, that kind of stuff in Georgia, Alabama, migratory lids were good. Commercial beekeepers like them because you can put 4 hives on a pallet, and with a migratory lid, you can just stack another pallet on that group of bees on that pallet, and it makes transportation better too. But telescoping is probably going to be better for the backyard beekeeper. Make sure I'm still recording. Yep. Make sure my microphone's on. You don't know how many times I've recorded things and my mic wasn't on or the camera died. So frustrating. Richard Brown. That was my mom's maiden name, Brown. We might be related. Richard, how small is too small for brood in a nuke for winter? Oh, yeah. Again, I want to encourage all of you, when you ask me a question, please tell me where you live. That helps so much. If you live in the deep South, you don't need as much stuff. If you live in the deep North, a nuke probably won't make it. So I can't really answer that question not knowing where you live. You need a lot more honey than you probably do need brood. If you have a 5-frame nucleus and you live in Illinois, I'd only want to have a couple of frames of brood in there, and I want the other 3 to be resources. And then I would feed them all winter too. Can you share why bees leave the queen? We have about 20 hives where the queen is left and nothing else. Thank you. Oh, that sounds like absconding. Oh my gosh, I'm gutted by this comment. You have 20 hives where the queen is left and nothing else? You went to inspect 20 hives and all you see is a queen? I've never heard of that. I mean, you might think 1 hive would do it, but 20? That doesn't make any sense to me. That's mind-boggling, mind-blowing. I mean, 20 of them, right? It sounds like they absconded and left the queen behind. I mean, they didn't swarm and leave the queen behind. I have no idea why that happened. I have no idea. I would have to have a lot of information. Like if I could have observed the bees all year, maybe I could say, oh my gosh, you put them right next to a train track or a loud noise, beetle infestation. I don't know what would cause them to leave like that. I am so sorry. Wow. I want to hear from you again if you find out why. Would you please make a note and tell me if you find out, if anybody gives you insight that's more able to maybe inspect your hives and kind of find out what happened. Did you use some kind of a treatment that ran the bees out? Did it get too hot? I don't know. Mind-blowing. Oh, leave a comment, guys, if some of you have some ideas why that might have happened. By the way, please subscribe. Appreciate it every time you guys join my channel here. So every time you subscribe, you'll be notified each time I make a new video. So do that, please. Also, give me a thumbs up. Christopher, how would my beehive lose a lot of heat if I left the top feeding box on all winter? Will insulating the box help keep liquid feed warm enough for my bees to consume? Christopher, I like your thinking. Like if you're feeding from a top feeder like we sell, that I invented, I have fed my bees with putting some bat insulation up in my deep box surrounding my food. I do that in the spring especially. But whether I would do that all winter long, I don't know. I haven't experimented with that yet. I don't like the idea of that much liquid going into the hive for food in the wintertime. But who knows? Christopher, experiment with a hive or two if you have a lot of hives and let me know how it works. You might have come up with something cool. Neil's here. Have you seen the Varroa controller from Australia? It's supposed to kill mites with heat. Just wanted to hear your opinion on it. Killing mites with heat has been an idea that's been around for a long time. There's been devices I've seen here in the US where you hook a battery up to something and it makes heat. It's a heated frame. The idea is that mites die what I'm going to say this right, mites will perish at a lower temperature. So you can heat a hive up and kill the mites without killing your bees. I have heard of that. It must not be gaining much traction because I remember hearing about it 10 or 15 years ago in the US here, but maybe it's a different device. I have not seen what you're talking about there in Australia. What do you think? Let's see, I answered that last night. Okay, here's a good one. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, I answered that one last night. Answered that one. Oh, that might be it. Oh, there's one more. Hang on. Got another one here. This one is from Tim. Tim says, first year beekeeper, I don't know if this is where I ask it, but to keep a hive from swarming, can I use an entrance queen excluder so she can't leave? I used one to keep them from absconding when I installed them. Will that work as long as I add more room for them? I saw the video on the Demarray method. Yeah, I made a video on the Demarray method of swarm control. You guys should watch that. That's when I stood behind a board and I rode on it backwards. That was fun for you guys to watch. But how do you put the hive back to 2 deeps and supers on top? David didn't say anything about that. Oh, so on the Demarray method, yeah. The Demarray method it does get kind of hairy when you get it all set up right. You'll have to watch that video. Let me see if I can remember to put a link to the Demarray method at the end of this video. Yeah, I'll do that. So when you get it all configured and you save them from swarming, you're left with a lot of boxes, right? And I like the idea of doing whatever you want to with them. You know, do you want to make them into 2 hives? Do you want to keep them as 1? Do you want to, I mean, you do have more boxes. So you do need to, harvest the honey off. You could make a split. Yeah, it gives you a lot of bees, gives you a lot of honey, and you still have a lot of options. So the option is up to you, what you want to do with it. That's a good question. Oh, man. I wanted to share with you guys something about beekeeping that is interesting that I think, and that is my dad was let me tell you a story about my dad. Those of you that have stayed around this long. Still recording and everything looks good. I've talked a lot about my dad. He has gone on. He's no longer with us, but I value my dad so much. And when people pass on, they still live with you because you still find yourself doing things or thinking that, boy, my dad taught me this. The people live on in our thoughts and in our own actions. I'm a lot like my dad, really. If you were to know my dad, you would probably think, my gosh. And my relatives will say, oh my gosh, you're your dad. I mean, you are your dad, So anyway, my dad was an electrician. And I helped my dad do a lot of electrical work when I was younger and growing up and everything. So beekeeping is interesting because beekeepers are a unique group of people. And I'm going to explain something to you today that I hope you can wrap your mind around because it's a little philosophical. So stay with me, okay? It might be helpful for those of you that are new to beekeeping and you're frustrated that you quite can't get a handle on it. So when my dad was teaching me electricity, he used examples of water, and I'm not going to bore you with electrical facts, but a lot of times my dad had such a great way. This is John calling me in the middle of a video again. I'll have to call him back. I do appreciate John, Dr. John Zavishlock. We talk a lot. So usually when he calls, I answer, but I can't right now. So back to my philosophical concept of beekeepers. So let me take you on a journey right now, like my dad was teaching me when I was young. He said, he's teaching me electricity, but let's say that you don't know anything about electricity. Some of you do, some of you don't, and it's dangerous, so be careful. I'm not recommending that you play with electricity. Just for entertainment and educational concepts, pay attention to what I'm about to tell you. If I took you to a receptacle, those of you that do not know electricity, and we pulled the receptacle out of the box, out of the wall, and you looked at it, and I said, I'm going to turn the power off. Here's a new receptacle. I need you to change it out. How many of you could change it out? Well, a lot of you could. Those of you that don't have any electrical knowledge at all, electricity knowledge, you could change it out because you're a problem solver. You could look at it and say, there's 3 wires going to it. There's there's a what we call a ground wire that's a safety, kind of not carrying any power to it. And then there's a black wire and a white wire going into it. So you can look at the new receptacle using, an observation, just like you change a tire, right? You can go to a car and take the, 6 lugs off of the wheel and put the new tire on, tighten it up. Most people could do that. I mean, if you had to do it, if you were stranded somewhere, and this is the only way to get off the island, you could probably figure it out. Electricity would be the same way. You could change out the receptacle if you looked at it long enough and figured out. You could put the black and white wire, look at it real good, and change it out. A lot of beekeepers, let me get this. A lot of beekeepers that are approaching beekeeping oftentimes will find a really good beekeeper, and they will watch his videos, whether it's me or somebody else. They'll watch their videos and they'll say, wow, I watch your videos. I want to do what he does. I want to be a beekeeper. And then they ask that person questions, right? So if you ask somebody questions about electrical work, you could do a little bit of electrical work. You could call an electrician up and say, I want to change out my light switch now. How do I do that? And they'll tell you, right? I got some notes here to keep me on track. Let me bring those up. So in beekeeping, it's similar because, you know somebody that is doing something pretty good in beekeeping, and you want to duplicate what they're doing. And because they're having success, whether you're watching them on YouTube or they're a good beekeeping entomologist and they wrote a good book or something. And so you try to mimic what they're doing on their YouTube channel or what they said in their book, and you try to mimic what they do, hoping for the same results that they had, right? That works good. For example, the electrical box, if you mimicked an electrician, if you sat and watched a master electrician change out a receptacle, you could probably do it, right? And you would think, I did it. I am an electrician. And you might mimic a beekeeper that knows what they're doing, and you say, wow, look at that. I did it and my bees are living. But the problem is the hiccup. The hiccup. I should make that my thumbnail. Beekeeping hiccup. Beekeeping hiccups. That's a good thumbnail, actually. So what happens is, let's say that you did the electrical box and you put it all back in the wall and put the plate on it, plugged it in, and it doesn't work, and you smell something burning. What's burning? You don't realize you didn't tighten the screw up, and it's arcing, and it's not warm enough to kick the breaker yet, but it's arcing enough to make a little smelly something, and it's not working right, low voltage, and you don't know what to do, right? That's what a lot of beekeepers do. They mimic the master electrician, and they do it the best that they thought, the way he did it, but it didn't turn out the same because we don't notice some of the things. Now, my dad offered to pay me $1 for every receptacle that I broke over tightening the wire in the receptacle. Guess how much money I made working for my dad tightening receptacles? 0. I couldn't break a 1. And I had a big screwdriver, and they're made to tighten down heavy. So it's the same thing if you think about, you want to go back to the master electrician and say, why is it smoking? Why is there not working? And they'll say, well, let's check the connection, right? They know to do that. But you may not know to do it because you don't have the background or the education or the training to double check how tight those wires are, or if they're looped correctly on the receptacle. So my point of this is, if we find somebody that we just want to ask questions to, because that's what a lot of you did today, and I appreciate it. I want to answer your question, and I love helping you. But the best way that I can help you is to encourage you to really understand learn the basics of beekeeping biology. The more that you understand bees and biology of bees, you become the master electrician. You become the master beekeeper. So instead of having to have somebody to rely on to tell you every little problem, the hiccups that happen, you can know the answer. You are going to be the one that knows the answer. That's a good feeling, actually. I get it. Stay with me. Don't turn me off. I get it that you're so new that you have to start somewhere, and the only way to learn is by asking questions. That's great. I encourage that. I love it. It inspires me when you ask questions because I know I can help you by answering them. Oh, wow. That was frustrating. I was right in the middle of my talk and my camera shut down and it overheated. This camera is so frustrating. I'm using a Canon R10 and I'm filming in 4K, and when I do, the camera overheats and shuts down. I was afraid I lost all that footage, but I didn't. But I had to, so it's still rolling and edited. I just had to start the camera again. I had to move the camera to the shade. It was in the sun. So let me get my thoughts back now, see if I can pull this off. So this idea of being able to make your own decisions about how to solve problems in your hive is so important. So that you don't have to always rely on other people to give you the answers. That's key. Here's my UPS driver. Every time I film, there's this like people showing up, cameras going off, and it can be so challenging to film, but I'll keep talking. So I want to encourage you in 2 areas to really beef up your ability to master beekeeper. Now, you don't really necessarily have to become a master beekeeper. You know, I'm a certified master beekeeper through the Eastern Apicultural Society of North America. That helps you. But on the other hand, you don't have to be a master beekeeper to master the art of beekeeping. So you can be self-taught. You can really pour yourself into scientific literature. You can really study hard. You can read a lot of material. You can biggest thing, that's one thing, study hard, take classes, learn, read books. Second thing, please, you can't spend enough time with your bees. You gotta be in the hives, you gotta make mental notes. You have to do the things. A lot of the questions, like you noticed you asked me today, I said, please do your own experiment. Let me know how that turned out. That's how we figure out stuff. You gotta try it, right? Can you go through the winter with 2 boxes, 3 boxes with that medium on top? Will that work? Will it not work? Depends on where you live and all that. But if you would do your own experiments, then you would come up with these concepts of whether or not these things you're asking me would work. So I can tell you the answers, but I can be wrong. I mean, not that I'm wrong, but I can give you what I think, but because where you live and your conditions, it may work. Or I can tell you that I think it's going to work, but because your conditions that I don't know about are different, it may not work. You're the only one who can really decide if what you want to do and if the problems that you need to solve are going to be able to be solved. However, having said all of that, I really do think it's important for you to start off in baby steps. And I know a lot of you are doing that on my live stream, on my YouTube channel, and I welcome that. I do. I really do welcome these very, very basic, fundamental questions, because you got to start somewhere before you can get to the deeper things in beekeeping. And that's why I'm here to do both. But please go ahead and realize that you don't get to the point where you're just asking, questions to solve problems past a certain point. You want to grow to the place where you can determine what the solution is yourself. That's what I'm saying. It took a long time to say that, didn't it? But I do know that when you start in the beginning, you have to ask to get your mind wrapped around it. So I'm here to help you guys both ends of the spectrum, right? There are some times that I am faced with a beekeeping dilemma that I don't know the answer to. For example, why did 20 hives that somebody told me that they lost 20 hives and nothing was left but the queens? What is that from? I don't know. I have no idea. I got speculations, but I don't know. I'd like to know what caused that. That's intriguing to me. So we're always learning. That's the key. Now, we need to give people room to learn, right? No matter who they are. My dad was a master electrician. He licensed master electrician. Spent his whole life. He was brilliant. He was an electrical engineer too. But one time, after he had been doing it for many, many, many years, we were working on a breaker box together, and the screwdriver hit the wrong thing in there, and sparks flew, and he blew the end of his screwdriver off. He's an experienced, well-educated electrician. Made a mistake. We all make mistakes. We all don't know the right things at the right time. We're all learning. So if you ever stop learning, if you ever think you know it all in beekeeping, you're going to miss out on a lot of stuff. So keep learning, hang in there, keep asking questions. I'm here for you. I got your back. I'm going to put my arm around you, and together we're going to figure this beekeeping thing out, mistakes and all. And it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. We don't like it, it hurts, but we learn when we make mistakes. So don't be all beating yourself up about it. I want to tell you about this video that I made that's really cool. It's a video on how to use the Demeray method. Mr. Demeray in the 1800s came up with a way that you might like to use this spring. It's pretty complicated, I'll be honest with you. I tried to simplify it, but you'll still have questions. But a lot of people love it. I've done it. It's cool. It works. Here's a video right here on this Demeray method. I'll see you guys over there.